Heaven did not tremble that day. It fractured. What began as a desperate struggle between cultivators and devils had already surpassed mortal reckoning. Blood had been spilled, souls had been extinguished, and ancient treasures had awakened from long-forgotten slumber. Yet none present truly understood. They were not fighting for victory. They were fighting for the right to survive a being who once ruled an era. And when the sky split in two, half bathed in fading sunlight, half devoured by endless darkness, they finally realized the true battle had only just begun. If you enjoy my way of explaining and storytelling, please consider supporting us through the donation PayPal. It really motivates us to keep creating. The elder devil's attention was fixed entirely upon Han Li, so utterly focused that it failed to notice the silent approach of the black dagger. By the time it sensed the threat, it was already too late. A crimson line flashed across the elder devil's neck, swift, merciless, and its final remaining head was cleanly severed. Joy flared in Han Li's heart, but before triumph could fully bloom, the headless elder devil reacted with terrifying ferocity. Its twin sabers swept outward in a vicious arc, hurling two streaks of black light toward him. In the next instant, its headless body burst apart, dissolving into dense clouds of roiling devilish chi. Though momentarily startled, Han Li had no intention of allowing his prey to slip away. Without the slightest hesitation, he formed an incantation seal with both hands and detonated the purple flame flood dragon he had released earlier. Blazing violet embers erupted outward, cascading through a 30-meter radius like a rain of falling stars. Several dozen small golden swords flashed forward, slicing cleanly through the two incoming black streaks and scattering them to nothing. The flying blades then dispersed in all directions, arcs of golden lightning crackling between them as they wove a vast net around the sea of purple flame. A thunderous crack resounded. Most of the devilish chi barely traveled a few meters before it was frozen solid within an enormous mass of purple ice. What little black chi remained was ensnared by the lightning net, where it was obliterated under violent bolts of golden thunder. Seeing this, Han Li brought his hands together once more and solemnly uttered a single word: rupture. Countless slender arcs of golden lightning leapt upon the purple ice as the net dissolved, shredding it into dust and utterly annihilating the elder devil's soul concealed within. From the extinguished remnants of devilish chi, several treasures tumbled free. When Han Li's gaze fell upon two of them, his eyes shone brightly. With a flick of his finger, twin arcs of golden lightning shot forth, instantly dispersing the black threads wrapped tightly around the objects. They were the two bamboo cloud-swarm swords he had lost in Devilful Valley. A surge of relief washed over him. With a mere thought, he tested their responsiveness. The two blades quivered, then sprang into the air before obediently returning to his hand. The persistent worry that had lingered in his heart finally eased. Though they had remained sealed for so long, only brief tempering would be required before they regained their former battle readiness. Meanwhile, the others could only stare in stunned silence as Han Li dispatched the elder devil with flawless efficiency. Even its soul had not been granted the slightest chance to escape. The onlookers exchanged uneasy glances, fear flickering in their eyes. Yet it was the human-like puppet that left them truly shaken. None of them had sensed such a powerful cultivator upon arriving here. Where had this figure been hiding? Had its concealment techniques reached such unfathomable heights that it could remain unseen even by their keenest perceptions? The thought churned their hearts into deeper turmoil. Still, none of them were ordinary individuals. They swiftly suppressed their shock and, without speaking, reached a tacit agreement to attack the barrier protecting the teleportation formation. A grey wall sealed off the formation from the outside world, formed by several flags planted around it. A restrictive spell further rendered it unusable. Several attacks shrieked through the air and crashed against the barrier. Spiritual light flashed brilliantly and thunderous reverberations shook the space itself. Yet to their mounting frustration, the barrier remained steadfast. Whether it was the demon's ferocious assault or Grand Immortal Shu's formidable techniques, Their strikes produced only faint ripples across its surface. They had naively assumed that once the elder devil fell, escape would be immediate. Now tension coiled tightly around their hearts. The lion hawk in particular grew increasingly agitated. It slashed wildly with its talons to no avail. Then, with a sinister gleam in its eyes, it opened its beak and unleashed surging waves of golden shock toward the barrier. A deep depression formed where the attack struck, and the barrier visibly trembled under the strain. Grand Immortal Chu's eyes flickered. At his command, the keen spirit peacock spread its magnificent wings and released a sweeping gust of radiant rainbow light. Beside him, Lin Yinping followed suit, repeatedly expelling streams of silver radiance at the same weakened point. The silver-winged night fiend condensed countless ghost fiend threads into a colossal python that lashed forward in the relentless assault. They all understood breaking through was their sole path to survival. None dared hold back. In the blink of an eye, dazzling spiritual light engulfed the barrier entirely. At last, the sound of cracking echoed faintly through the air. It was at that moment that Han Li and Gui Ling arrived in a blur of motion. The human-like puppet had vanished somewhere along the way. Han Li's expression remained calm, yet his mere presence unsettled the others. And as he stepped forward, the formation flags suddenly let out a piercing wail before splitting apart, dissolving the barrier entirely. The cultivators surged toward the teleportation formation in a frantic rush. But before anyone could reach it, several spheres of light burst violently, sending the charging cultivators crashing to the ground. After that brief yet telling exchange of blows, all parties retreated warily from one another. Grand Immortal Shu held an azure pearl in his hand, fury blazing in his eyes as he glared at Han Li. "Fellow Taoist Han, what is the meaning of this?" "I should be asking you the same," Han Li replied with a faint enigmatic smile. Several golden swords hovered before him, while the fearsome tri-flame fan rested firmly in his grasp. The night fiend folded its wings around its body, its gaze icy. "The first to leave will be me. I do not trust any of you humans." Han Li's smile faded, his voice turning cold as frost. "That will not be so simple. This formation can only transport 2 people at a time. If it is destroyed from the other side, while we hesitate here, where will we go then?" As he spoke, the others subtly shifted, forming a tightening circle around the formation. The 3 factions stood locked in tense confrontation. Just as the circle was completed, an overly sweet voice drifted from the distant palace. "You dare kill one of my brethren before my very eyes? Do not even think of escaping." Though the voice came from afar, its icy fury rang with terrifying clarity in every ear. The instant her subordinate perished, Devil Ancestor Yuan Cha had sensed it. Drawing upon nearly half the power of the Black Wind flag, she had already suppressed the 9 Truths Devil Suppression formation. Even the 8 Spirit Ruler proved powerless before it. Though the ruler summoned 8 Spirit Beast Phantoms to besiege her, the Black Wind flag's overwhelming might forced them back time and again. Originally, she had intended to dismantle the formation before subduing the ruler. But now, with her sole subordinate unexpectedly slain, her wrath surged without restraint. Her expression turned glacial. With a sharp breath, she expelled several crimson flags into the air and struck them with rapid spell seals. Blinding radiance erupted from each one. In the span of a breath, they expanded to 30 meters in height. Towering banners inscribed with purple incantation characters, black chi writhing across their surfaces like living serpents. With their appearance, the surrounding tornadoes swirled violently, grinding against the altars that upheld the 9 Truths formation. Though golden blades of light slashed furiously into the raging winds, it was painfully clear the formation teetered on the brink of collapse. As the black-robed woman advanced closer to the palace, the 8 Spirit Ruler could no longer exert its full power. It relied solely upon its 8 Beast Phantoms, yet even they were driven astray by the Black Wind flag, their forms flickering unstably. A violent surge of wind swept across the battlefield following her threat. causing the hearts of both cultivators and demons to tremble. Still, the three factions continued glaring at one another, each fearful that another might seize the teleportation formation first. From the direction of the palace came earth-shaking rumblings. Dark clouds swallowed the heavens. A dozen black tornadoes converged, twisting together until the very air shuddered. A profound sense of dread gripped Han Li's heart. "We cannot delay," he said sharply. "Fellow Taoist Gui and fellow Taoist Lin will go first. Guiling is a demon beast, an old acquaintance of the Night Fiend and the Lion Hawk. Fellow Taoist Shu should be more at ease once fellow Taoist Lin crosses safely. Next the Lion Hawk and fellow Taoist Shu. Finally I will leave with the Night Fiend. We must hurry, otherwise none of us will survive." Grand Immortal Shu and the others likewise sensed catastrophe looming. Though doubts lingered, there was no better alternative. After exchanging brief tense glances, they nodded. Guiling immediately complied and stepped into the formation alongside Lin Yinping. Yet unbeknownst to them all the instant the two entered, the formation flared with white light and a third silhouette materialized within. The others were left utterly stunned. At that precise moment, the black-robed woman's frigid voice rang out once more. Primal chaos rend the heavens. From afar, a pillar of pitch-black light erupted skyward. Midway through its ascent, it halted abruptly, then split the sky in two. One half remained clear, bathed in brilliant sunlight. The other was swallowed by a curtain of endless darkness, which spread with terrifying speed. In scarcely an instant, the black veil expanded until it loomed directly above Han Li and the others, blotting out the heavens themselves. Before anyone could so much as draw breath, the black-robed woman let out a cold, lilting laugh. The radiant pillar of light in the distance flickered once and vanished. In its wake, darkness surged forth, swallowing heaven and earth alike. Devil Ancestor Yuan Cha had activated the Black Wind Flag's spatial powers to seal them within. Shock drained the color from Grand Immortal Shu and the others' faces. "Run. Where is the one who just entered? The formation isn't responding. We can't leave." Furious shouts rang out one after another, panic spreading like wildfire. Han Li felt his heart sink. The figure who had just appeared within the teleportation formation was nowhere to be seen. He had not even caught a glimpse of that person's face. Yet there was no time to dwell on mysteries. More urgent dangers loomed. His form blurred and he reappeared directly before the formation. Lin Yinping and Guiling stood at its edge, circling it anxiously, examining every inch with furrowed brows. "Let me see." Han Li barked, his voice heavy. He raised a hand and pressed a spell seal against the formation's edge. It flickered weakly, then fell still. No response. His expression darkened. At that moment, Grand Immortal Shu and the silver-winged Night Fiend arrived beside him. Though both were formidable in cultivation, neither possessed deep knowledge of formations. Noticing Han Li's grim expression, the Night Fiend demanded sharply, "What's wrong with it?" "The formation itself is intact," Han Li replied coldly. "It's the Black Wind Flag. Its spatial seal is suppressing us. Unless that seal is lifted, this formation is useless." "How are we supposed to lift it?" the Night Fiend roared. "Are you suggesting we kill Devil Ancestor Yuan Cha? If we had that power, why would we be scrambling to flee?" Han Li shot him a frigid glance. "Then stop wasting breath on complaints. Fortunately, she is still preoccupied with whoever remains inside the palace. Now that she has sealed us in, she will not spare us immediate attention. This is our only window to devise another plan." The Night Fiend's eyes burned with hostility, yet something flickered through his thoughts. With a sharp snort, he forced down his anger and fell into brooding silence. Grand Immortal Shu likewise lowered his gaze, lost in calculation. Lin Yinping and Guiling stood rigid, disappointment and dread etched plainly across their faces. Beyond the spatial seal, amid the devastated grounds outside the formation, the black-robed woman stood within the heart of a towering black tornado, a sneer curving her lips as she regarded the colossal flag hovering above. The surrounding winds, once apocalyptic in their fury, had begun to subside. The carnage they had wrought was now plainly visible. Although maintaining the spatial seal consumed a portion of the Black Wind Flag's power, the Nine Truths Devil Suppression Formation had already been utterly destroyed. All that remained was the masterless Eight-Spirit ruler. Though immensely powerful, it lacked the full intelligence to command its abilities to their greatest extent. Her crimson-tinged eyes swept slowly across the battlefield. The Eight-Spirit ruler's spirit beast phantoms were repeatedly torn apart by the raging winds, only to reform moments later. They could not approach her position within the storm's eye, and she had no intention of stepping beyond its protection. At last her gaze settled upon the figure floating motionlessly above the palace, the large-headed eccentric. Since the battle began, he had not moved a single step. The baleful winds summoned by the Black Wind Flag were terrifying indeed. Yet the very center of the palace remained strangely untouched, a sanctuary amidst ruin. A peculiar gleam of amusement flickered in her eyes. "Fellow Taoist, she called sweetly, go and claim the Eight-Spirit ruler. Do not concern yourself with Long Mang, I will ensure he does not interfere." The eccentric hesitated, uncertainty flashing across his features. "What?" She laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Do you doubt my protection?" As she spoke, she lifted an arm toward the distant Ye clan cultivators, who stood accompanying the mirage of their Grand Elder. The moment they noticed her gesture, fear seized them. She merely flicked a finger as casually as one might brush aside dust. The cultivators were bewildered. Even the eccentric frowned in confusion. Then several muffled pops echoed faintly. 2 small blossoms of crimson bloomed upon the foreheads of the Taoist nun and the elderly man beside her. Their bodies went slack and plummeted from the sky. The treasures and protective light surrounding them had been utterly useless. As for the square-faced middle-aged man, the bone bracelet hovering before him flared with brilliant yellow light, intercepting a translucent pearl no larger than a thumb. The pearl struck and detonated. The mirage of the Ye clan Grand Elder shuddered as its forehead was pierced. The pearl vanished without a trace. The shining moon band. No, a replica, the black-robed woman murmured, faint surprise touching her tone. Sacred Ancestor, what is the meaning of this? The eccentric demanded darkly. What meaning? She replied, casting him a sidelong glance. Since you harbor doubts, I merely demonstrated my capabilities. Or do you still maintain ties to those people? The eccentric snorted irritation flashing across his face, though he suppressed further protest. His gaze drifted toward the damaged mirage of the Ye clan Grand Elder, bewilderment clouding his eyes. At that very moment, the corpses of the 2 slain cultivators convulsed. 2 nascent souls burst forth and fled in panic toward the square-faced man. With an icy expression, the man briefly withdrew the bone bracelet and allowed the 2 souls to slip into his sleeve before restoring the treasure's protection. All the while he stared warily at the black-robed woman, fearful she might strike again. Yet she found it beneath her dignity to attack further. Having sufficiently displayed her power to the eccentric, she dismissed the square-faced cultivator from her thoughts. Turning back, she spoke coolly. "Assist me in obtaining the Eight-Spirit ruler, and I shall consider your obligation fulfilled. Once I escape, I will infuse your body with devilish chi and extend your lifespan. When I deal with the demon within you, need not even lift a finger. Or is such a simple task beyond you?" Her expression hardened. The black and white of her eyes bled into a sinister crimson. The eccentric's face shifted rapidly. Sensing her displeasure, he understood that refusal was no longer an option. Grinding his teeth, he shot forward toward the Eight-Spirit ruler. The instant he moved, a cold snort echoed from deep within the palace. Space above him distorted violently. A colossal fist, 30 meters across, materialized out of thin air and came crashing down like a mountain torn from the heavens. Dense spiritual pressure bore down upon him, suffocating in its weight. His heart jolted with shock. He instinctively sought to retreat, but the black-robed woman merely chuckled and flicked her hand toward the palace. A deafening explosion erupted. The massive fist veered abruptly sideways, then disintegrated into countless motes of white light. Relief flooded the eccentric. Without hesitation, he surged forward in a streak of yellow light, closing in on the eight-spirit ruler. Yet, when he reached within 30 meters of it, a faint, almost imperceptible sigh drifted through the air. A strange glimmer flashed, and a streak of black-red swordlight swept toward him. The black blood blade. The eccentric's voice trembled with cold shock. In one fluid motion, he spat out a small yellow sword, which expanded to 3 meters in length. It spun rapidly, layering countless sword images around itself. Simultaneously, he produced a small white bottle and aimed its mouth toward the incoming blade. A dense white mist burst forth, surging forward to intercept the attack. The collision came in a heartbeat. The black-red swordlight shuddered faintly, then tore through the mist as if devouring it. Its radiance intensified, swelling to 10 meters in length as it cleaved downward with unstoppable force. Panic flared across the eccentric's face. Forming a rapid incantation seal, he directed the massive yellow sword to block. At the same time, he flung a pitchfork from his sleeve, sending it streaking upward in a flash of silver. The black-red blade struck the layers of sword illusions. For a brief instant it paused. Then a low hum resonated. The illusions were shredded like paper. The blade descended upon the massive yellow sword. The weapon let out a mournful wail as cracks spidered across its surface. The eccentric's face drained of blood. He spat a mouthful of black essence onto the blade to reinforce it. Fortunately, the silver pitchfork arrived in time, bracing the yellow sword and slowing the blade's descent. But even combined, the two treasures would not endure much longer. Spiritual light flared across the eccentric's body as he prepared to flee. The black-robed woman's expression darkened. Casually, she flicked her finger toward the sky above the palace. A muffled groan sounded. A faint white silhouette staggered into view. It was the white-robed scholar, the Ye clan Grand Elder, who had vanished earlier. His face was utterly expressionless. In the center of his chest, directly above his heart, was a small bloodless hole. At the very instant the Ye clan Grand Elder was forced into view, the black-red blade of light faltered. Its brilliance dimmed its murderous force, weakening just enough for the large-headed eccentric to brace himself. With both the massive yellow sword and the silver pitchfork straining against it, he managed to hold the descending arc at bay. Seizing that fleeting reprieve, he shot backward, retreating beyond the blade's lethal range. The scholar paid no heed to the gaping wound in his chest. Fixing the eccentric with a piercing glare, he spoke in a voice as sharp as honed steel. "Where do you think you're going? The Black Blood Blade is the Yi clan's legacy treasure, meant for the execution of traitors. Since you have colluded with this elder devil and forsaken our clan, do not blame me for showing no mercy." At those words, the eccentric's complexion flushed red, then drained white. A flicker of turmoil passed through his features before it hardened into a sneer. He gave no outward sign of remorse, as if the accusation meant nothing. Resentment carved deep lines into the scholar's formerly refined face. The elegance that once defined him had been eclipsed by naked hostility. The black-robed woman, meanwhile, was mildly surprised that her earlier strike had failed to kill him. Seeing the scholar's unyielding stance, she frowned and casually reached into empty air. The gesture was light, almost careless. A crackling sound split the silence. 5 crystalline beams, each half a foot long, shot from her fingertips and streaked toward the scholar with terrifying speed. The Ye clan Grand Elder narrowed his eyes, but instead of retreating, he spat out a fiery red disk. It spun before him, bathing his figure in blinding scarlet light. Before the claw-like streaks could reach him, a massive white hand materialized out of nowhere. It closed around the 5 beams in a single grasp and crushed them into nothingness. The black-robed woman watched, her expression turning grave. From within the palace, Long Meng's cold laughter echoed. "Yuan Cha, if you can ally with humans, why can't I? Did you truly believe you could break the 8-spirit ruler's restraints so easily? I am curious to see how those devil arts that once dominated the mortal realm fare against a Buddhist attribute ruler. And even if you manage to overcome that, I still possess a remnant of devilish chi to draw upon. The woman's face darkened at the mockery. Her gaze turned glacial. No matter how much devilish chi you cling to, you are still but a bodiless soul. My victory is inevitable, and with the spiritual medicine scattered across this mountain, expending a little power is inconsequential. Spiritual medicines. Long Meng paused. Her tone shifted subtly. Old devil, you wouldn't dare. Before she could finish, Yuan Cha smiled faintly and flicked a green spell seal toward the enormous black wind flag. The colossal banner trembled. Black radiance flared wildly along its surface as its tip snapped sharply in the air. A pillar of condensed wind erupted from the flag and vanished, only to reappear directly before the square-faced cultivator. Black motes scattered like embers as the wind column swallowed him whole before he could react. The funnel howled ferociously. Within it, countless blades of black wind materialized, slicing and shredding everything they touched. Caught off guard, the square-faced man poured spiritual power into the bone bracelet without restraint. Dazzling yellow light expanded outward, forming a protective barrier around him. But the assaults were too numerous and too strange. Each time a wind blade struck the barrier, it vanished upon impact. Yet moments later, palm-sized gaps would open in the shield one after another, until the barrier's surface was riddled with holes. Under such bizarre and insidious attacks, even the bracelet's formidable protection could not endure. The yellow light shattered completely. The cultivator's face turned ashen. As the windstorm intensified, cracks began to crawl across the bone bracelet itself. Gritting his teeth, he spat out an azure sword and leapt upon it, fleeing in a streak of blue light. The bracelet on the brink of destruction was abandoned. He understood with chilling clarity remaining meant certain death. No, the Ye clan Grand Elder cried in alarm. Too late. The moment the man entered the black windstorm, the azure light shielding him flared violently, then burst apart. A wretched scream tore through the air as his body was ripped to shreds. When the storm subsided slightly, only 3 tiny balls of light remained, 3-inch-sized nascent souls, clinging desperately together as they fled in terror. But the wind closed in from all sides. Escape was impossible. Just as the black blades were about to tear them apart, a flash of black light pulsed through the pillar, and the wind blades halted abruptly. The 3 nascent souls rejoiced and tried once more to flee. Yuan Cha merely sneered. With a subtle motion of her fingers, she extended her hand toward the swirling gusts. White radiance suddenly ignited around the nascent souls, solidifying in an instant and freezing them in place. At the same time, countless specks of black light converged, compressing them into 3 small spheres. Hands forming an incantation seal, she began chanting in a low, cryptic tongue. Black light shimmered, and the spheres vanished. A heartbeat later, they reappeared before her. Devil cease at once. The Ye clan Grand Elder roared, directing the black blood blade toward her in a sweeping arc. It is already too late, Long Meng said coldly. Crimson light blazed from Yuan Cha's eyes, engulfing the 3 nascent souls. Terror twisted their tiny faces as their forms shrank rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the crimson glow receded, flowing back into Yuan Cha's mouth. Though the sequence seemed complex, she executed it with terrifying ease. The scholar's face turned deathly pale. The black blood blade trembled faintly in his grasp. After a brief struggle, he forcibly suppressed his fury and steadied the weapon. "What is the meaning of this, Senior Long Meng?" he demanded harshly. "With your strength, you could have saved my clansmen. Was your offer of alliance nothing but hollow words?" Long Meng snorted coldly. "Why should I concern myself with a few mid-nascent soul cultivators? Yes, they carried a replica of a spirit treasure, but its power was pitiful, not even a tenth of the original. And do not misunderstand, I formed an alliance with you, not your clan." The scholar's expression darkened further. "Even so, are you not worried that consuming those nascent souls will restore her strength?" "What do you know?" Long Meng replied coolly. "Devouring them will temporarily increase her magic power, yes, but refining them requires a vast amount of devilish chi." She intends to exploit the abilities of my Silver Moon wolf body instead of relying solely on her own. Isn't that correct, Yuan Cha? Precisely, Yuan Cha answered calmly. Of all beings, you understand your body's potential best. I had originally intended to conserve some strength to dismantle the eight spirit ruler's restraints, but that would take too long. To prevent unforeseen complications, I will instead unleash the full power of your late deity transformation cultivation and annihilate you all. She exhaled softly and formed another incantation seal. Silver light erupted around her, intensifying until it resembled a miniature sun suspended in mid-air. Within that radiance, the sound of wolves howling echoed endlessly. An overwhelming pressure descended upon the world. The ground quaked violently, as though the very fabric of reality were cracking beneath the strain. Then the silver light pulsed and exploded outward. When it faded, a colossal two-headed wolf stood where the woman had been. It towered like a mountain. One head was silver eyes closed in eerie stillness. The other was black, raised high, its fangs bared and its eyes blazing with feral fury. Each claw gleamed with terrifying sharpness. Each head was the size of a small pavilion. But more dreadful than its size was the spiritual pressure it radiated, a suffocating, ancient force that chilled the blood of all who beheld it. In that moment, even the bravest among them felt despair creeping into their hearts. If you loved this story, please consider supporting us through the donation PayPal link below. Your support allows us to keep bringing you the best and most immersive video. We truly appreciate you being here with us.